Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Most people try not to dwell on the subject of death. Still, it is a universal experience. Regrettably, we don't receive guidance on how to navigate the journey from this world to the next. Is there any guidance to be found? Mission Evolution Radio Show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore supporting the death process is Nancy MacMILLAN. Nancy is a registered psychotherapist and former certified health practitioner who's worked in acute care, palliative care, and long-term care. She's now in private practice. Nancy holds a degree in economics, followed by graduate work in adult education at the University of Toronto. She did further graduate work at Queen's University in Theology, specializing in spiritual care in a pluralistic society. Nancy is the author of Call to the Far Shore, Carrying Our Loved Ones Through Dying, Death, and Beyond. Her website, nancymacmillan.substack.com. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Hello, Gwilda. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a real pleasure. So, Nancy, your bio states you were a certified spiritual health practitioner. What is that exactly?
Yes, most people will know the work through chaplaincy, and the work has morphed into multi-faith chaplaincy, and then the title has become spiritual care practitioner in many places, just to denote that there is a pluralistic role to this work now, and it also denotes the degree of training that we've undergone, usually graduate work, plus years of clinical training that has actually made us into psychotherapists now as well. So we have a dual role in many places now.
So what do you mean by pluralistic?
Well, it means able to meet people where they're at, regardless of their religious tradition or spiritual beliefs, or having no religion or spiritual beliefs. We're there for the human being in front of us, and being able to enter into their world and their culture in whatever way that is helpful and that they are willing to enable us to meet them at, and being support, especially in a hospital setting where they're undergoing usually trials and tribulations.
So that's why it's shifted from certified spiritual health practitioner, to spiritual health practitioner from chaplain?
That's right. In some cases, it depends where you're at, where the terminology is applicable. But in my area, that's how it has moved to, yes.
So what education is required to be certified as a spiritual health practitioner?
Again, it could vary, but in general, it means a graduate, you've done an undergraduate program, and then a graduate program in theology or religion. And then there is clinical education that is above and beyond that can be very intensive. It's about, learning about yourself first and foremost, and then learning the skills on how to meet another person with as much clarity and integrity and skill as one can.
I can understand how you'd need to know yourself first before you could do that.
Absolutely. That's a hallmark of being a therapist, really, in most professions now. If we don't understand our own self and have done some degree of our own self-examination, then we're likely to bring some of that into our encounter with another person, and things can get a bit mixed up if we're presuming we're putting a bit of a projection on the other person from what things we haven't cleared in our own self.
And it's a moving target, I'll bet.
Definitely, yes.
So Nancy, what brought you to work with the sick and dying?
Yes, it's I've had many encounters in my own life with my own mortality, different illnesses, and then a deep brush with cancer that opened me up to to all that goes with that, and my experiences brought me to the edge of breaking me open, really, to see the possibilities that we go through when we go through a deep illness. And then, of course, being up close to my parents dying and death, also broke open the window of, or the door even, of death, and made me see that there's so much more going on than many of us have had a chance to really understand, given the way our culture has shaped our life these days. We're far removed from a deeper experience of what happens at the edge of our life that might take us into death. And there's so much going on there. And I was able to experience some of that and see so much more than I ever thought. And I wanted to explore that further, which then, took me into the professional world of it, which enabled me to be at the bedside of many people who are very ill, who are dying, and experience more of what happens at the edge of our life into death.
When you were suffering with your illnesses, did you have a near-death experience yourself?
I wouldn't say I was a near-death experience in the way that we have come to understand it, where it's a dramatic instant where one leaves your body and has a very, illuminating experience. Mine was a much longer drawn out one over a course of several years, undergoing different treatments for cancer that brought me to the edge over numerous times, so that I felt like I was getting a glimpse of the other side and receiving some levels of illumination at maybe a slower rate, maybe at a rate that I could absorb. But it was transformative for sure.
So those glimpses of the other side, would you mind going into those for us?
Well, the glimpses happened in the sense of, being at the edge of one's ability to tolerate the likelihood of dying, and then receiving messages over and over again in different ways from different beings, I would say, from my ancestors, that I'm not alone, and that there was always grace wrapped up in every encounter that took me closer to the edge of death. And that started showing me the light that is always wrapped in our darkest times. And that has been a guiding force for me now. Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy, so many people, when they go through something like you've gone through, become pretty self-absorbed because it's such a trauma.
Mhm.
What made the difference for you? How did you transmute that into the service that you're in today?
Hmm. Well, I think we might get self-absorbed in the immediacy of it. But I think many people break through that, and we can get a greater perspective of life and death through going through something profound. And that perspective is what really reshapes a life. It gives a sense of really what is most important in the world and in our lives and amongst our relationships. And then the preoccupation with one's smaller self and the smaller day-to-day stuff, it gets in the balance less significant, and we can weather this little storms. We die these little deaths, and then the bigger death, we're more prepared for.
So has it really permanently changed your life having gone through that?
Yeah, definitely, yes. I feel I've been marked with a bit of grace of God by having come to that edge, um, and then coming to that edge with other people. Then I get that rubs off on me again, and I get to see the light that's on the other side of that door that looks so formidable, and that death becomes a formidable, what could be foe, but I have come to see it, that we can make it into a friend as well. One that we have to struggle with and do our hard, deep dive of work with, but it shapes us and recreates us and makes us stronger and sturdier for this world. And it gathers around us beings that can help us weather the storms and make us fit for a new life and new service. And yeah, that sense of perspective is something that we need to come over and over again. And I was lucky to have been brought to that brink. And I remember the first night of facing the diagnosis, and I had 2 young children. And the only way that I got through that first night of pondering that I would have a very short life was imagining the drastic difficulties that other people in other parts of the world were ongoing that were far greater than mine, because I had all the comforts of my home and support and family. And so that, right at the very beginning, gave me an inkling that our small suffering is only a small part of the much larger world that we're all trying to move through and find our way with. And there's always somebody who's struggling more deeply than we are. And that, in an ironic way, gave me the strength to put in perspective my own.
Well, speaking of which, what are your perspectives on death, dying, and how do they differ from mainstream?
Well, I'm going to be optimistic and say that the mainstream is catching up. It's a long time coming, and there's still strong pockets of our culture and society that fear death and want to control it to the point where we think we don't need death anymore, that we can evade it or sidestep it. But I see wave after wave of people who are taking this conversation on now and really trying to wrap our heads around what has happened in our civilization that has caused us to be so far removed from the great pillar that death is, that life and death are not opposites. They are part of the same cycle, the circle that we are in. And as we touch back into many of our heritages, our ancient heritage that gives us the wisdom that is helping us now reclaim the wisdom that dying has for us, that helps us know that, yeah, we have limitations in our human life that includes death, and that can we accept that and know that along with that comes an abundance of grace and an abundance of a life that continues beyond our narrow sense of what reality is on this shore of life.
Do you feel that we have distanced ourselves from death to our own detriment?
Oh, definitely. And that has been the heritage of more recent times that is now showing its limitations, because
Well, we're going to have to talk about limitations on the other side of a station break. Nancy and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation. The end has come, the night has fallen. I have reached the end of day.
Does anyone know how to help the dying cross? With us this hour discussing stewarding the dying is Nancy MacMILLAN, the author of Call to the Far Shore, Carrying Our Loved Ones Through Dying, Death, and Beyond. Her website, nancymacmillan.substack.com. Nancy, when you are on this side, how can we help the dead to get to the other side?
Well, we all have to do our own dying. And lucky are we if we have people that are around us and can be present to the reality of that process. Often, when we want to be helpful for a person who is dying, we are ourselves afraid of the reality. So the closer we can come to being present with what is happening in front of us, the greater service we are for the person we're helping. Can we let death live between us in a room and speak the truth of it and not evade it? Then we're doing a great service for the person who doesn't have to deny that reality that they are facing, and they can have company in sharing the distraughtness, the concern, the fears, the grief, and then the possibility of what might be lying afterwards. Can we engage in those conversations and let them teach us what it's like to die? And then together we can meet that threshold and, as best as we can, be present, and with our calm nervous system, if possible, be a present witness for the person who is crossing over, knowing that they will have to take those last few steps on their own, but we have given them the courage and the love and the heart to help them on their way so that they can reach their hand out and perhaps reach for their loved ones on the other side who will help them with those next steps as well. So there's many ways we can be present. And, there's a difference between how to be present through the dying days, and that will shift as a person is going through different stages of their dying process. So, being attentive to what is helpful for the person and what might be irritating. Knowing that the senses of the person who is dying start to shut down gradually. But the sense of hearing is often the sense that is last to go. So we can use our calm voice and our loving words to help the person and know that they, even though if they may not be conscious to our awareness, they may still be very much hearing our words.
So, Nancy, when you're in the room with someone that's getting ready to cross, what's the experience like? Are you starting to become aware of some of the more esoteric things going on?
Well, esoteric and the physical, morph, I would say, because we can observe the physical and that will give us illumination to more things that are going on. And at the physical level, the first thing that we'll be conscious of course, will be the long periods of sleep that a person is going into. And that's a healthy, natural process of letting go. And my attempt is to help people understand these outer signs so that they know what death looks like, so that it doesn't have to be something alarming or fearful that one then rushes to then get a medical person to come to alleviate what could be perceived as suffering. And maybe it is sometimes, but often it's a natural process of dying where a person goes into this irresistible sleepiness. And then our skin tone will start changing. Different parts of our body will start changing color. And then the most dramatic sign is often our breathing and how our breathing starts changing and become more shallow and then become more gasping. And then ultimately there'll be this staggering, stuttering breath and gurgling probably in the throat that is called the death rattle by some people. And again, this is where people get alarmed and scared that their loved one is suffering. But I try to encourage people to just sit with that and observe that this is the wisdom of our bodies and knowing how to shut down. And by this point, a person's sense of feeling of discomfort is far and away gone at this point. They are not perceiving the suffering the same way that we would be if we were breathing in that matter. And this is called ordinary, normal dying. And we can help our loved ones. We can help the loved ones who are around by drawing their attention away from what looks like pain at that moment and sorrow to observe what is around that person. Can one perceive the peacefulness that may be descending in that room and with that person, and even to the point of the translucence in the skin that reveals the light that is dawning on that person, and that there is a remarkable beauty that can be oddly present, and that many people remark upon in a kind of surprised way.
Well, it sounds like being present is the key. Now, there's two things here. One's a death doula, and the other is a psychopump. Are you familiar with both, and what's the difference?
Yes, death doula is becoming more widely known now. Death care guide is another word that's used. And they are people who are learning the ancient art that is being renewed on how to care for a body, a person who has died in their home, or sometimes in the hospital, how to take care of the body and to wash and allow it to rest for a number of days. And I was able to do that with my own mother, and that was a remarkable experience, to be able to care for the physical body of my mother for 3 days in my home. And I would really recommend that people who have any inclination to consider this, to discover a death doula or death care guide in your community and bring together some information on how one can do that, because it is a profound way to come up close to death, to meet it and go through that other door where you see the illumination there, and the gift that gives for our loved one, and the gentle excarnating process we can be part of is a tremendous gift.
So a lot of different cultures have that ancient cultures have that custom of
Mm,
sitting with the dead for 3 days,
that's
or
right.
letting the body rest for 3 days. And even today, I know a lot of Buddhist practice do that. What is the purpose behind that? Is the
Mhm.
body dying slowly even though the spirit is gone?
Yes, that's exactly it. And, you know, we've lost that knowing, but being up close to it, we start to see more of what that really is. And I've heard of that and I've studied it, but being up close to my mother, I could witness the gradual change in her body that shifted over the days so that she was ready at the end of 3 days. I would say, you know, I put my hands on her on the third day, on the top of her head, and I could feel this enormous amount of warm energy pouring out the top of her head. And once one experiences that, you know, you can't go back to just you know, it's a flat line of when death happens. It is a process, just like when we incarnate, it's a gradual process. So helping a person, it's sort of giving a person the courtesy to get accustomed to their new state of being. That's how I could feel it with my mother, allowing her the space to adjust to this new realm that she was just entering, and giving her the courtesy to unfold and get accustomed to it before a lot of other things happen, which, you know, if you're in the medical system, you'll be put in a, well, I won't get graphic about it, but it will
But
be
yes,
a more
it's a
dramatic
rush,
experience.
yeah, a
So
rushed process for
it'll be a
sure.
rushed process. So
Yeah.
hey, we can learn these things again. And then the wonderful experience was by entering into this ancient practice with some women friends around the body of my mother, I could feel the ancient practice and the ancestors that have done this in the past, and they were with us.
Mm. So
And
there's
we
a thinning in the veil of sorts.
absolutely, and they recognized what we were doing. And they came because they could feel, oh my goodness, people are finally doing what we recognize and what we know. Yeah.
So that covers the death doula. What is a
Mhm.
psychopomp, and how
So
do they differ?
psychopomp is a person who can cross over through that veil a little further and help the person who is dying, who's going through the death stages, and help them release further with more support and more intentionality. And that's a role that is even further away in our culture. And I don't know very many people who are doing that, but I welcome the time when we will have more insight into that role once again.
So these people, are they trained like shaman? That's where they go into trance and work with the other side?
That's my understanding, yes. And and so in indigenous cultures, that would be a well-known and well-traveled path that is closer to be able to be accessed now. In the Celtic tradition, there were certainly people called watchers, I believe, that had that ability. And so I think that we will become more awake to the possibilities of that again, because there's a lot of common ground between our old cultures and indigenous cultures. And by leaning into each other, we can start remembering and then hopefully go back to the cultures where our own psyche has some resonance and dig deep and bring some of our old knowing to the fore again.
So how has your work changed your perspective on death, on your own death?
On my own death.
Hmm.
Well, I get to live closer to it all the time. I'm not going to pretend that, if I suddenly had a dire diagnosis and the next day, that I wouldn't have to go through many stages that I had to go through before. But I trust more that there's more help to guide, and that there's a trustworthiness in the process, that we've come into this life for a purpose, and our death gives us an ability to revisit our whole life and to make amends, to have the conversations that are important and that will help bring a completion to this part of our life, and that we can then reach our hands out to our ancestors, to our loved ones who will be there to help us cross to that far shore, as I like to allude to, that can be as far or as close as we make it.
Well, Nancy and I will be right back to continue our discussion, but it is time for a station break. Please stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation. I've been broken, shattered, cast to the wind. I am scattered upon the wind. I've been broken, shattered, cast to the wind. I am scattered upon the wind. I've been broken, shattered.
What is dying anyway? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing the death process is Nancy MacMillan. Her website, nancymacmillan.substack.com. Nancy, just before the break, we were starting to talk about, well, we have been talking about the death process, but you kind of brought up something, I believe you were talking about a life review. What is a life review, and how does that help us to cross?
Mm-hmm. Well, many cultures, traditions, religious, spiritual beliefs, and people now who are experiencing near-death experiences are able to tell us about this life review that seems to be across the board something that people are bringing back or relaying about what happens when we first cross over. Now, from a tradition that I've studied, and it'll probably have some variations in different cultures, but there's an immediate sense of a great panorama of our life that we get to witness within the first short time of our having died. And we get to see the totality of our life. And then over a period of time, we gradually review our life in more detail and experience, often from the point of experience of the person for whom we have harmed or helped, the reality of that deed. All of this is to help us to learn from our life and perhaps to make reparation and how to eventually come to a new place, a new perhaps frequency or stage of our development, so that when we return again, we'll come with the new learnings that we have integrated between our death and rebirth.
So, Nancy, does a belief in the afterlife or reincarnation play heavily on how a person dies?
Hmm. I believe that the greater that we have a sense of what's happening after our death, then the greater we'll be able to meet that more consciously. Now, people are at different stages, and you know, perhaps a person haven't thought about it, but we still are going to go through these stages. It's not going to stop what is maybe a primordial process, but the more we engage with it consciously, the more we'll be able to participate and probably take advantage of what's there for us.
So, does fear of death, so someone that believes that once you're dead, you're gone,
Mhm.
does that fear of death actually kind of drag the process on, make it more difficult?
Well, fear is going to always be something that drags us down because it's a lower frequency vibration and it pulls us out of the potentiality of what we can be. And so that's part of this whole movement to look at death more generously so that we can start working through some of this fear so it doesn't have to hold us back at that ultimate time. And that's a big task if we haven't started looking at it a little earlier than at the last moment. But I believe grace is always with us and mercy. And if we haven't been able to do all of that work, we will get another chance again. But the more we can meet it up front and consciously, we'll just be able to move with it and be more help to other people as well.
What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about the dying process?
Hmm. Well, at this point, I would say most people think that we can sidestep it and that death will just happen to us. And that is true. It will just happen to us. If we do not participate with it and learn how to die well, then we have missed a huge part of why we are here on this earth. And to accept the whole cycle of coming into this life and leaving it and what we're doing in the midst of it, the more we can bring our awareness and bring it into full circle, then we are participating in life and death, which are not opposites, but are linked. And so we do have the responsibility to participate and learn how we can die well. It means embracing our many limitations and also softening and surrendering. We don't have to want to die, but we do need to do it, like not waiting till the end and just trusting and speaking from our heart and tending our nervous system and meeting it in the best way that we can, which means the fullness. Doesn't mean that we have to be, uh, you know, wanting it, but we have to live through the experience of it, which is being heartbroken and grief struck and still moving on.
So, do the dying? Let's talk about ghosts. No talk about death is complete without talking about ghosts. Do the dying ever get stuck in this realm and not cross?
Well, that is the wisdom that we are told, and I have a felt sense about. Um, Many wisdom cultures have a deep understanding about the importance of our dying and the death and being able to keep moving on through the layers that take us into further layers of after death. And if we are getting stuck, we are so afraid or um, other things are holding us back, there is a chance that we might linger on that threshold and not keep crossing over. And that's a difficult place to be. And then there's even further examples where a person might be so traumatized or have done something really violent or nefarious where that is going to hold them back. And that's where we hear of the ghosts that can't cross over. They don't have enough energy. They don't have people perhaps that are helping them cross. And so there is a risk of getting stuck. And so that's the whole world now of trying to understand that we have a role to play in how we help our loved ones cross, and that grieving and mourning and bringing ritual and celebration to the process is a way to gather energy for our loved ones who are dying, who are crossing, that will help them keep going and not turn around and look for the energy back with us.
I know in some traditions, the one that's coming to mind is the Tibetan. The group will totally gather and eventually light fire to a photograph or something where the whole group is, this is after the person's died, but the whole group is, helping their spirit then to cross to the other side. Do you know of any other traditions that do that?
Well, I'm certainly aware through the work of indigenous shamans, that same process where the understanding of the power of our grief is the vehicle. Our tears are actually help form the river for the person to steer their way to the next world that they're going to.
Beautiful.
That's a powerful thing. And then, of course, it brings me to the world of keening, which is in many cultures, and definitely in the Celtic culture. And it's what I stumbled upon almost because I wasn't terribly informed about my own Celtic background, but through the experience of being so involved with my mother's dying and death, keening broke through with me rather spontaneously as I engaged with the ancestors. And the power of that keening, of really allowing at a very visceral, physical level, the heart to break open and this flood of tears to overtake my body, and the wailing that occurred, it did bring me in touch with that river that is a pure river of life that I could feel refreshed in, not drowned in. And I believe that is what people are talking about, that is the current that allows our loved ones to ride on, to help them move to the next place.
Have you noticed, or are you aware of how the Judeo-Christian belief in hell, and some people feel that maybe they haven't lived the life that they should, that the fear of where they're going to go plays part in their death process?
Yes, fear will come up in any shape and form. And definitely as we get closer to the edge, all those fears will surface from our earliest, memories. And yeah, hell is a lower level, lower level interpretation of, of the biggest pictures of life. And it's done a great deal of harm to inflict fear on people. There's the truth that lies within it is just the seed that when we are doing our life review, we are meeting the things that we have done. And so we do get to experience our deeds. Now, for some people, that might feel like hell, but it's an experience that is to instruct us, not to punish us, so that we can learn and return in a better way.
There are also all sorts of framing for that life review process. I know, again, the Tibetans call it bardo. I think the Catholics, I think that's some of what purgatory is. But it's not very well understood in our society. Do you think preparing people better for that very experience could ease their crossing?
Yes, and it will depend upon where a person is at, but I think we have to prepare ourselves. And the more that we have a sense of a continuity with something that is beyond this reality, then we can start entering into a new imagination. And I think that is at the crux of so many things, is learning how to let our imaginations and the myths and symbols that we've carried with us, throughout all of cultures, to start speaking to us again, so that it gives us a bridge to the other world. And when we start creating the bridge, then we start wondering about it. And then perhaps the other side starts speaking back to us, because we are starting to be open and wondering. Just this idea of openness and wondering and interest cultivates interest from the other side. And then we start having some communication intuitively, whether we consider ourselves psychic or not. Just the small nudges that tell us, oh, talk to this person, or pick up this book, or listen to this podcast. All those little things come from somewhere, and they start in tiny ways to start building the bridge to a much bigger perspective that will help us.
We've certainly lost that, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I think to our great detriment, like we spoke earlier. Well, we're about to go into a station break, but on the other side, I'd really, really love to pick up on the concept of ancestors and what it really means. Please stay with us as Nancy and I continue to explore dying, death, and beyond. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching. Brilliant feathers of an unearthly hue lie high on the edge of his dream. A whisper of touch, an unheard song. Those bird takes flight, prompted by his broken heart. Fly high, sweet things.
Okay, so I'm dead. Now what? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Nancy MacMILLAN. Her website, nancymacmillan.substack.com. Nancy, we were just about to get into more discussion about the ancestors. And do you, as a person that's helping the dead get ready to cross, do you become aware of their ancestors showing up for them? What and whose ancestors are they? Where do they come from? What's going on there?
Right. Well, it is a common phenomena at the edge of dying and death that people will start having a sense of being talked to in a different way, or strange dreams or words will come out of their mouth, like, I need to get the train, or mom, you're here. And their mom has, of course, been dead for a long time. Something has entered into their psyche or into their field that is starting to help them prepare for their death. And so I'm witnessing through the person that there is something more going on, that I would call their ancestors or loved ones are becoming more real to them than perhaps the loved ones that are gathered around the bed. And that's a beautiful thing to watch. And I experienced it with my mother, and feeling the presence of her mother very much in the room as she was dying. So I've experienced this phenomena, and it just makes sense that they are there and they want to be of help. They want to be of help throughout our lives, but perhaps they get access to us at that edge, because sometimes that's the only crack we've given them, that we've let go enough of our ego self that we are now porous enough that we can let that numinous side that our ancestors are part of in.
Do you feel that they're always here? It's just a matter of us being able to reach a frequency where we can see them or sense them as we're getting ready to die?
Oh, absolutely. And, I feel I'm part of the attempt to revive that knowing that our ancestors are not gone. They're just in the next room. But it's been a long time since we've allowed ourselves to experience that. And so, yes, they can feel far away because we haven't allowed them a seat at our table, so to speak. But there's all kinds of ways that we can begin to re-engage with them. And that's part of my mission, I would say.
So you mentioned continuing the connection with our loved ones after death. How does one do that, and what are the benefits?
Right. Well, there's two broad paths. We can go the external path where we start just getting more interested in them as who they were and getting their pictures and remembering their stories and what they like to eat, and there's in our genetic genealogy history, so we can gather that external world and start getting curious and interested, and that often starts triggering things. And then we can also do the more quiet inner work of coming into some stillness and even just in our quiet place saying their name from our hearts and paying attention to what starts shifting around us. Can we feel a little glow? Can we feel a sense of warmth or tingling? These are small signs that are very real, that begin that journey to know that we are always in communication with our ancestors, but we do have to open the door and do our part to welcome them in, say hello, and to be expressing gratitude and honor so that they can find us and that we can, for both our sakes, be helping each other again.
There's lots of different seemingly strange customs that has to do with, like, the Choctaw used to carry the bones of literally the bones of their ancestors when they'd move.
Mhm.
And so you can, scientifically look at that and go, there might be some communication going on with the DNA still in the bones.
Mhm.
Then there was another one, as European, of having hair wreaths. Are you familiar with those?
Hair rings, is that what you said?
Wreath, like a
Oh,
Christmas wreath, but it's made
oh,
out of
okay.
little twists of hair of the dead ancestors, which is kind of strange.
Okay.
I didn't know if you'd heard about that, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just as you say, that there is something still living in its minute form, but as a fractal part that we obviously people from other traditions and that are more in touch with their ancient roots of knowing uh, could use as a relic. And a relic is something that is a communication tool that allows that bridge to happen. When we have lost touch with some of those instruments, let us say, it requires our own bodies and beings to become that instrument. And perhaps it's harder, but that's what we have now. So can our heart be that instrument that through the power of our love and our remembrance and gratitude can start being the bridge?
Well, if we think about it, if they're ancestors, we're carrying some of the frequency, right? In our
Absolutely.
DNA.
There you go.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. So, if you were to tell someone, okay, so say I know my time is nearing, or even if I don't know my time is nearing, but I just want to be, thorough and be prepared. What do you suggest for people to do to become friends with death, to get more prepared?
Hmm. Well, it's going to look a little different for everybody given what you've already done in your life to prepare. But the first step, is feeling the feelings, and we all will go through the depths of despair or anguish or fear and alarm and recoil, and allow ourselves the mercy to do that and to keep going. That's the thing, is can we keep moving with it? And then another stage, might break through. So then we're in a new place and we can look around again. Can we have the conversations with those whom we love and perhaps those whom we have been estranged from to make clear our hearts with them? Because it's much easier to do that work on this side than it is to have to take it over to the other side or into other lifetimes. Let's do the work that we came here for and have the hard conversations, the loving conversations that break people open and make what's most important real between us. And then gather a team of people that you can rely on, whether it be friends, whether it be professionals. There's going to be a team of people that you want to have on hand to help you through the many stages that you'll go through. And hopefully one of those people will be somebody who can help you engage with what is your spiritual strength? What have you leaned upon throughout your life that can be of aid now? And whether it's something from your early days or something you've discovered or that you can find anew to help you cross and reach over and imagine your loved ones that will be there for you. So to keep asking for help. Keep asking for help from your friends, your teams, and the teams that are on the other side, which include your ancestors. Just ask for help.
So asking opens you up through it? Is that the whole
That's
point?
right. It's asking for help. And I don't mean to say, oh, can you help me? I mean, if one is getting close to death or been given a difficult diagnosis, there's just an honest bowing down to the earth, a breaking open, and asking for help from the deepest and highest sources to help you walk that path as graciously as you can.
So when you're talking about clearing things up before we cross with other people, are we actually able to reduce some of the karma we carry into the next life by so doing?
Oh, I believe so, very much so. I was fortunate to have time with my father during his long time in the hospital. And it gave us the time. We weren't close, and I had held a lot of difficult emotions, but it enabled us to actually develop a relationship in those last months of his life that now carries over, in a totally new way now. Same with my mother. I was able in the last stages to break through, difficult emotions because our hearts were broken open together and time speeds up. We don't have a lot of time when a loved one is dying. That is the time when we can do the miraculous when we thought things were stuck forever. Some hurts are so deep that they might seem impossible, but I think there's always a small step we can take to liberate the denseness of those feelings that will only help to liberate the energy that will allow us and our others to pass over in a more clear way, less attached to old stories that are not going to serve us as we move on, for sure, because they're usually attached to stories that are old and that, we're trapped into that victim and perpetrator mentality that we're being shown now has got to be lifted and lightened because it's a circle, it's a trap that will only entrap us into another loop of difficult circumstances if we don't start clearing somehow, some way, in whatever way we can.
Is it easier for the ones left behind to let go when they have done that work with the dying?
Yes, and that's true, and that allows the grief to be more clear, and then you can even come to the praise part. Even if you've never had a good relationship with somebody, it's amazing how breaking through some of that, you can start finding where you can still find the light and the praise for that other person, which is a real grace for them and for yourself, a liberation of a deep quality.
So we're just about out of time. Nancy, basically, what would you suggest people that are helping someone else cross? How can they stand firm for them?
Being a loving presence, taking care of your nervous system so that you can be calm and lend your stable mind and heart. And, in some traditions, it says, just be present, do nothing. In other traditions, it's the currency of our loving heart that will carry the other person forward, not evading it, not avoiding it, but
Well,
blessing it.
it's that magic moment. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Nancy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Gwilda.
Our guest this hour has been Nancy MacMILLAN, the author of Call to the Far Shore, Carrying Our Loved Ones Through Dying, Death, and Beyond. To find out more about Nancy, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, nancyjmcmullan.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us again right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.
One people, one nation, searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for